What do you think went wrong with MySpace?
What do you think? What
went wrong with MySpace? What's the real reason you think that MySpace just completely imploded? I remember it was the rage, it was everything.
I think their product didn't change. If you look at their product, it's pretty much this. When it died to when it was born, it almost looked identical and stayed the same. And I think Facebook came in and out innovated them, and they did a better job executing as a company, like in that whole process that I mentioned, where you're like a lean startup, you're building, you're testing, and you're putting it out there. I just think they got out innovated and they got out executed, to be honest.
I remember thinking that at the time that when I was on MySpace, I didn't know who I was speaking to. That it was all a sham, and people were like making their pages. There was no real person behind each page. While Facebook started from a positioning of you have to have a legitimate college email account. It was a real person, real page, right? And then they ultimately spread it out, but it was sort of like one was for real and one was not for real.
I think the core of Facebook is their news feed, right? So we naturally have FOMO, this fear of missing out. We check news at multiple times a day. You go on CNN, on Fox, whatever, right? And you see what's the latest, because we don't want to be. We have fear of missing out. We don't want to be last to know. We want to know what the latest show is so we could talk about it with our friends. Facebook had the news feed, which was also news, but it's news of your friends. What are your friends up to? What's their status update, right? Where are they going? Where are they traveling to? And I think that's where they became a utility, right? And when you're a utility, you're using that service on multiple times a day, right? I think MySpace, as you mentioned, was more like, I guess, public, right, rather than private in your friend group. It wasn't about news updates of your friends. There was a bunch of random people, and you didn't really give a shit about what their update was, you know what I mean? It was more about people promoting themselves and like, oh, I got to get more friends, but there was no real addiction. There was no FOMO. If I didn't use MySpace for 2 weeks, nothing really happened. Like, I don't miss anything. But if I didn't check Facebook for 2 weeks, I could miss out on, what my uncle did or my best friend did.
You think the world's a better place or a worse place because of social media?
Worse. I think a lot of what you're seeing right now is because of social media. I think social media has overtaken as a news source for a lot of people than actual news. I think a lot of people get their news from social media, right? And when they get their news from social media, and it's not professionally edited and by authentic journalists, there are a lot of things that get misconstrued but they spread so quickly. So before things are kind of people put a flag on the content, which I believe is actually really good, that like companies like Facebook and Twitter are flagging content to be false, right? But I think they're doing that for a reason, because today that's our source of news for a lot of people, and I think it's a problem. That's our first information source before anything else, and that's scary.
So there's two sides to that coin, right? One is that they censor and they flag, but are they flagging fairly?
Yeah.
And that's a really big issue, especially among conservatives. Yeah. Conservatives would say that it's absolutely positively biased against conservative voices, and liberals could say anything they want.
Yeah.
I believe that's true.
Which part?
That it's biased against conservatives.
Yeah.
It is. It's liberal leaning, especially. I mean, they all are somewhat. I don't think even Twitter tries to hide it. I think that it's probably not quite as bad as the conservatives make out, but I think it's very. I think that even 1% of bias is there's no room for it, because it's that big and that important. In other words, one of the old, I didn't make this saying up, but one of the theories about democracy is that is a prerequisite to having a properly functioning democracy is to have news that people can trust, an informed populace. It requires to have an informed populace.
I agree.
If the populace is not informed or misinformed, you have democracy stops functioning correctly. I think that's part of why we're having so many problems right now. So it's part of this. Part of it, I think, is this bias, but that's, I think, a smaller part. I think far bigger problem is the algorithms that they use to show you more and more of what they think you'll like. So what ends up happening is people are getting in echo chambers.
Yep.
So they start showing you more and more, and I'm guilty because I will click on if someone has a viewpoint that I don't like, I'm like, put them. I'm done with it. I'm done with it. If they say it once, I want to see it. Too much, I don't want to hear it. So over time, they have people. You have two people with diametrically opposed news feeds. One is seeing things that confirm their core beliefs and on the right. One confirms their core beliefs on the left. And like any system, I always believe things tend to get exaggerated over time. They become mockeries of themselves over time. Like anything typically revolves to the most extreme part of a view over time. So the algorithms are reinforcing themselves. What do you think about that?
I think you're 100% right. I think it's a very scary combination, right? I mean, all these platforms from Facebook to Twitter, they're in the business of making money from ads, right? The way they make money from ads is they get users like you or like me or anyone else to come to their service or to their app as often as possible. The way you get people to come to your service as often as possible is you show them content that they think you like.
Or that pisses them off.
But that makes you use it more and more. Right. So you're absolutely right that they're in the business of creating custom algorithms for each person in order to get you to come use it more.
Right.
And then combine that with the fact that social media is our first news source. Even the president, like the way we get news is from his tweets, right? And then it becomes news, right? So it's like tweet first, then it's news everywhere, right? So it's just, this is the way we get our news. And I don't actually think the world, like, right now people are saying like, this is on fire. I don't think things are actually more on fire than they are.
I would agree with that. I don't think people are even nearly as divided as they make it out.
But I think as much bad stuff is happening today as it did 10 years ago and 20 years ago and 30 years ago, but right now we're just, the floodgate of information, the fire hose of information is so massive and so quick, and it spreads instantly, right? Because we're all on social media. Everyone's sharing everything that it just creates this almost like unnecessary conflicts and debates and topics, and everyone get heated up and it just spirals out of control. And then combine that with the algorithm issue where these sites want you to use it more. I think we're in a real problem here.
What do you think should be done? Anything? Should something be done? Does someone have to intervene? Is it possible to intervene?
Yeah, I think there are definitely issues with the censorship side, right? I think it might be biased. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's not fair to critique it because it's so early, right? I think it just started to happen recently. So I think over time, the censorship should continue, but it should also, it should improve. And hopefully it will, I don't know if people will ever believe that it's finally leveled, but I think that a lot of the bias should sort of taper down. But aside from that, I don't know. It's just it's stuck in this vortex. I don't think it's going away soon. I don't know how to get it out.
Did you see the Netflix documentary on the social dilemma?
I started to watch it and finish it.
Me too.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Everybody that saw it said, I started watching it and didn't finish it. Yeah. Right? It's a very common response.
It got a little repetitive.
Yeah. So they made their point. They made their point in
the first 15 minutes.
We all knew that. It's ugly to see it. And do you think that whole premise that tech is intentionally doing things that are manipulative beyond the normal Madison Avenue manipulation? Like Madison Avenue's been doing that forever. Like all ads are based on that, and things that we, if you watch Mad Men, watch the TV show Mad Men, like, it's always about like, ads are designed to that. Spokespeople are sending messages, linking, Coca-Cola commercials, linking, the world of Coke and the real thing, all these things, right? Yeah. But do you think that, tech has taken it to a level that's now become dangerous, or is it just the reality? You think it's dangerous?
I think it's just the reality. I don't actually think somebody is sitting there like tweaking knobs to go into this direction. I think the algorithms are just so good, right? That on their own, they're just...
Oh, yeah, that was metaphorical, of course, right? Yeah. But they were trying to say the person that wrote the algorithm is Machiavellian.
I don't know. I think that's bullshit. I think the person who wrote the algorithm was their instruction was get people to use this app as often as possible. Right. It's not like in the future we want to manipulate people. So no, I think that's complete bullshit.
Yeah.
But it's happening because everyone is on social media. Like everyone, like even it doesn't matter how old you are, you've got multiple sources of social media. That's where you get your news. And even if you don't use social media, our news is almost like, as I mentioned, like the news reports usually come from like, you know, it used to be just like celebrity gossip comes from some shit, like some kind of Instagram post. Now it's literally like the president's announcements come from a tweet. You know, it's just, we live in a very different time.